Hello, Santa Rosa Junior College yoga students. My name is Misted Forrest, and I'm a TA and also a registered yoga teacher working with Karen Stanley. I was trained 200 hours Hatha Yoga at Community College of San Mateo and 50 hours in teen yoga from Rise Yoga for Youth. I also have a bachelor's in psychology, many classes and trainings in teaching, consciousness, and also was a professional dancer. The poses we'll be doing today is chest expansion, three-legged dog, upward facing dog, triangle pose, standing straddle splits, tree pose, and seated forward fold. All right, let's get started. So for chest expansion, we're going to take our hands, interlace the fingers behind you. Make sure that you have your feet hip width apart. The toes are gently on the ground. Relax the knees, relax lower back. You can actually take your hands and relax that lower back behind you. Interlace the fingers, and then open up the chest. If your shoulders are too tight, you can always grab a towel or strap and then hold that behind you. What we're doing is we are stretching the pectoral muscles, major and minor, opening up the shoulder girdle, and at the same time, we are strengthening the traps and rhomboids. Here's another view. You can also look up or slightly in front of you, but it's best to look up and release. You might see some variations in other yoga classes where they take this pose and they also add it as a forward fold. This doesn't do the exact same thing, but it's also really nice. It does less of stretch in the front of the torso and more in the back. Next up, we have triangle pose. So of course, when you're doing this on your own after watching me, you're going to want to do it on both sides because this is a bilateral pose, meaning you need to do it on both sides of the body. All right. So for triangle pose, often people will get into it from Warrior Two. So I'll show you what that looks like. Here I'm in Warrior Two. And I'll just straighten the front leg, send this hip up, teeter-totter over, and I am in triangle pose. For some people, because I have a super wide stance in Warrior Two, because I've been doing yoga since I was like 16 years old, I will bring that foot back in so it's closer, and then teeter-totter over. The goal of triangle is not, oh look, I can get my hand down on the ground, which I can, great. But it's this stretch and opening here in the upper hip. We're getting into all these connecting muscles into the hip, and you should feel it also in the back. It's an amazing hip opener. You also want to make sure that the shoulder is directly in the same line as your head and your chest. So it's common to see people sending their arm way back this way or way forward this way, closing the chest. So you really want to open the chest. It can help to maybe have the opposite hand on your shin, or if you have a block, you can use the block to help you. Once again, it's about the opening and stretching of the hip, not about getting your hand all the way to the ground. You can either look up towards the hand or you can look down towards the ground. Make sure the back foot is perpendicular to the front foot. So often, for the next pose, standing straddle splits, you'll get into it from triangle or any of these, poses. All right. So standing straddle splits, we're going to rotate the front foot to match the back foot. So having both of my feet pointed either forward or open to the side, like in second position in dance. Inhale the arms up, relax the shoulders behind you, engage the core, and with a flat back, hinge over. When you get to the bottom, and if you need to, you can use a block also to help you. There's a couple of options you can do here. You can spread the legs a little bit wider. If that feels good, you can walk the hands back behind you. You can stretch on one side, then the other. And later in the course, we're also going to be doing spider, which you just bend the legs and straighten or hold in a bend. There's also something really nice that I learned from another yoga teacher a couple years back, is you put your hands on a block, keeping your head down, and then you bring your arms forward, and then you have this nice stretch in the upper back. So a lot of fun variations you can do here, but just being right here is great. And if you ever need to just bend your knees for a second and come back, you can do that as well. 2 ways to come up. Engage the core, glue the shoulders back, engage the feet, and come up with a flat back. You see that a lot in dance. You can also engage the core and just very slowly, with a more rounded back, come up. Head is last to come up if you're doing it that way. All right. Make sure that if you are doing this the second time around and doing the poses with me, that you go ahead and do triangle on the other side. Oh my goodness. Yes. All right. Next is another, so that was a monolateral pose. Back to a bilateral pose. We are going to be doing tree pose, one of my favorites. Here's a trick with balancing in any balance pose. You want to find all your weight into one leg, as if there's a rod from the bottom, from the top of space, all the way to the bottom of your foot. Imagine roots going from the ground into your foot and holding you in there. Spread the toes so you create a bigger surface area. Then bring the weight into the ball of the other foot. Options here, you can either just have the foot on the ground, bring it slightly above onto the shin. Do not put it on the knee, it could be right above the knee, or a little bit higher, which you might need an assistance to get it up there. From here, bringing the hands to the chest. Don't look down, look at eye level. So spreading the feet wide is way number 1. Looking at your drishti, point of focus, away from you at eye level is point number 2 for balance. And point number 3 for balance is just a steady, even breath. Also engaging the core, and in tree pose, we're not just pushing down with the bottom leg, we're actually opening up with the upper leg. If you feel comfortable here, there's a couple of ways you can challenge yourself. You can grow your branches. Later we'll be doing twisting tree where we turn. You can open up the chest, or you can close your eyes. So all those fun ways to challenge yourself in this pose. And to come out of the pose, very important, you're going to bring that leg in and slowly bring it down. Awesome. So make sure you do it on the other leg. 3-legged dog, then upward facing dog, and then lastly seated forward fold. So for 3-legged dog, You're gonna get into it just like you would with downward facing dog. If you have a wrist problem or it's really sensitive on your wrists, you can always use your fists. You can use wedges, which is a block like this, but then it's cut in half so your wrist can fall down. You can use these like things that look like bars, or you can add more layers with your yoga mat by folding it. So whatever you need to do. All right, so make sure you have a blueberry shaped size underneath your palms, gripping with your tips of your fingers, sending your weight back. Ooh, feeling that stretch in the hamstrings and my brain is not working today. Okay. So you're making sure that the eyes of the elbows are pointed forward. And then sending the weight back. The chest is down towards the thighs. The head is relaxed. Engage the neck. Tuck the chin. When you find your balance, you're gonna bring one leg up into three-legged dog. The toes are pointed down. By doing this, we are strengthening the legs and we are strengthening the hip. There is an option to open up the leg, but make sure the chest doesn't go swinging that way. The chest is still down, but it's good to practice with toes and hips down first. And then you're gonna do the other side. So all the leg poses are strengthening the hamstrings and the quads and the hips and the core. Nice thing about downward dog, we're also strengthening the arms and we're also stretching the hamstrings. I mean, this is like one of the best poses. And then if you want to, opening up and coming back down. Once again, you can fold the mat and that will help with any pressure. If you feel like you can't get your legs straight, don't worry about it. I recommend bending your legs so you take pressure off the lower back, because as you can see twisting, shoulders back, twisting the forearms. It's not the middle finger that's forward, it's the index finger that's forward. Then I'm tucking the toes, engaging the core. And by doing that, I give myself a lot more ability to come down this way. If your hamstrings are super tight, then go ahead and bend the knees. You don't want to be way in the front. It's better to be a lot more in the back. So it's better to bend the knees so you can get more backwards. All right, upward facing dog. So upward facing dog does take a lot of strength, and if you can't do it right away, don't worry. Just like with chaturanga, it takes a lot of strength. So most of the time in upward facing dog, you're gonna get there from plank. If you start from downward facing dog, you're still going to come into plank, even if it's only for a second. If you're still new, I would recommend having your knees down, making sure the elbows, of course, always are glued back, lowering down, and then lifting up and coming up this way if you were a beginner. That way, if it's too intense, you can always come back down. Some people, it's not good for their back, and they should not do upward facing dog. So what do you do if you're one of those people? So doing a modified chaturanga on your knees, lowering down. Instead of upward facing dog, you're gonna do cobra instead. Gluing those shoulders back. Exhale, engage the core. Inhale, cobra. This is a baby cobra. So as you warm up and as you increase flexibility, you will increase your range of motion for cobra. So if upward facing dog is too hard, do cobra. For those of you who have the strength, and desire to do upward facing dog, coming from downward facing dog into plank, chaturanga, scoop, and really squeeze the butt, squeeze the abs, squeeze those shoulders back, hold, and sending your weight back, and coming back down. All right. If there's any additional questions, you can always message me about that one. And I can go more into detail. But the main thing is you want to feel strong in the shoulders, just like in plank and push-ups, you want to feel the strength in the arms. Don't ever lock the elbows. There should be a slight bend. We're engaging and strengthening the entire back, the shoulders, the abdominals. We're also squeezing and strengthening the glutes, the butt, and we are strengthening the legs. I mean, it's an awesome one. If it's too hard to come from full chaturanga, once again, you could do it on your knees first, and then scoop forward, and then push up that way, and then tuck the toes to come into upward facing dog. Last one. Seated forward fold. If you feel like you are not having your sits bones right underneath you, your sits bones, you can feel them if you put your hands underneath your butt. They should be right underneath you for any seated pose, especially any seated forward folding poses. If you don't have a relaxed back and you have any tension, all you gotta do is take a blanket or roll your mat a couple times and then have your butt sit on the edge so that your pelvis naturally will tilt forward. I've been doing this for a long time, so I don't necessarily need to, but I still might anyways. All right, so I'm gonna straighten both of my feet, glue the shoulders back, bring the arms up, lengthen the spine, and hinge forward. This is one of those poses that you could sit here for a long time and have a long stretch. I would recommend doing it after you've had a good warm-up, or you can do it just for 10, 20, 30 seconds. If you are sitting here for longer, you can, on each exhale, bring your chest closer to your knees. Lengthening the chest and hinging forward. So what do I mean by hinge instead of fold? So think of a door, right? It closes and opens. It doesn't round while it's doing it. Hinge, not round, right? Hinge, not round. So with the back, we want to protect the lower back, the lumbar spine. So we want to lift up as much as we can, feel that length and extra space in the spine, and then you can watch the hip and back and see how I am hinging as much as possible. You'll get to a point where obviously you'll naturally round the back a little, but the difference between that and rounding the back, do you see how I just completely collapsed versus straight? Well, I hope this was really helpful and informative, and see you next time.